You can't go back to your command, said a doctor. Mason, when you changed, everyone around you changed also. They wouldn't know how to act around you. Why don't you think of something else? There's a galactic circus that travels from planet to planet. Heck, be a star. You could be a star showing off your new powers, and way, that way we could study you while you make a living at the same time. Mason was becoming furious. The doctor went on saying, I'm getting tired of my medical career. I could be your manager. You could be known as Newton the Magnificent. Haha. With your short body, haha, you could be a riot. All the scientists and doctors started laughing. Mason thought that he had died and gone to hell. He began to think that the radiation in the gun had killed him. And when he came to, he found himself in hell as a strange dwarf with demons that resembled his friends. Mason started breathing hard for some reason. Before the scientists and doctors could realize that they had depressed and angered Mason too much, Mason shouted, All right, I'm funny, huh? A short, strange, comical midget. Suddenly, Mason flew off the floor and landed in front of the sliding glass doors. He punched a hole through the concrete wall with his fist, scaring them in. He then shouted, You call me Newton. You think that is funny. Grown sophisticated scientists like you. All right, I have changed. Okay, from now on, it's not Mason anymore, it's Newton. And I will take over this space station like the man from the future said I would do. And I'll terrorize the cosmos. Mason was joking, but his name was now Newton. But his name was not Newton, even though he was joking. Newton flew off the floor and rammed a scientist in the stomach with his head, knocking the scientist to the floor, gasping for breath. Newton then began knocking the feet from under all the scientists and doctors, and accidentally knocking one out. The men were helpless against Newton's supernatural mutant powers. After lightly injuring them, Newton flew with his might and crashed through the concrete wall. He got his dwarfish body up off the floor and stared angrily at some of the people, who quickly ran off down the hall. Newton flew off after them. A few minutes later, the word got around that Newton had gone on a rampage. Although Newton had only injured a few people, the excitement made a reporter say that Newton was killing people and destroying things right and left. The Teleton police brought out their laser guns and rifles to protect the people from Newton. As Newton wobbled quickly down the hall, he bumped into Sergeant Storm and said, Storm, I want you to take my things and get out of here. Take Coco with you. This entire space station is beginning to get to me. After Storm ran off down the hall, Newton flew off in the hopes that he would find a space shuttle that could take him back to the planet, or to the moon. Where is the transporter system? He asked himself. When the news had got out that Newton was killing people, the chief of police told the Teleton police to kill Newton on sight. Hearing the bad news, Major Matt Mason II and his crew left the space station and headed back to planet, the moon, with their own space station. The same with Mason II's crew. Newton was now, the same with Mason I's crew. Newton was now walking depressed, was walking through a deserted hallway, feeling depressed. Suddenly, Newton heard a clanging sound in the silence that made him look around. Newton suddenly stood stone stiff in terror to see a big, bulky, shiny, black metallic robot walking down the hallway toward him. It was 10 feet tall, with crab pincher-like claws and a laser cannon on its chest. It walked in human form and was 50 feet away from him. Newton turned quickly around to run from it, but he was suddenly trapped by the Teleton police, who ran up and stopped at the other end of the hallway and aimed their lasers and other types of weapons at Newton. The big robot stopped and aimed its weapons at Newton also. Newton stood frightened in between them. Newton also felt tired and drained of energy for some reason. He felt quite doomed. Suddenly a voice came over the hall speaker system that filled the hallway when he shouted, "Ready?" All 50 Teleton police aimed their weapons at Newton. "Aim," shouted the voice again. Newton couldn't believe what was happening. "Fire," shouted the voice, and Newton was now being rained on by blue bolts of energy and beams of intense laser light from the police and bulky robot. Newton's clothes began shredding, and his mutated flesh was burning. Newton let out a yell of pain and hit the floor of the hallway, with the intense energy blasting into him, knocking him around on the floor. A few seconds later, Newton was laying motionless on the floor, all burned and charred. The police quit firing. The police and robot quit firing at the same time. The smoke was in the air from Newton's burning. The police had used weapons that would have vaporized a normal man, but Newton was somehow still in his mutated form. Everyone was about to leave the hallway when suddenly Newton started to move again. The police couldn't believe their eyes. The energy from the weapons had actually recharged Newton and had made him stronger. The energy from the weapons had actually acted on his mutated body as fuel, as food helps the living organisms. Newton's burned mutated skin began to grow back at a tremendous rate. Seeing the miraculous recovery, the police prepared to fire again. Newton saw them getting ready to fire and didn't want to be hit again. To avoid the pain of being fired upon, he flew off the floor and crashed through the wall. But instead of finding himself in another part of the space station, he was being sucked out into space. All 50 police and one awkward robot began to get sucked toward the hole Newton had created. Since there was nothing to grab onto, the vacuum of space sucked everyone out into the icy cold space. The lack of air pressure caused the whole hallway to suck out the air in other rooms of the space station. People and debris were being blown out in hurricane winds as they were blown toward the hallway. Suddenly explosions began to occur in the space station as walls and ceilings began to collapse from the lack of air pressure. People were being blown out into the dark void, only to die horrible deaths from a lack of air and air pressure. Electrical explosions began to occur now, causing a chain reaction of destruction. A few minutes later, and the whole entire Teleton space station was destroyed and lifeless due to a faulty backup system that should have closed the electrical doors to the airless hallway. No one had survived. The next day, Major Mason No. 2 and the others received the news about Newton and what he had supposedly done to the space station. None of them could believe it. Sergeant Storm 2 felt sorry for Newton and the tragedy he had caused. He said, "Mason, your clone is now dead. I'm very sorry for you, but it is probably better that Newton has accidentally killed himself than having us have to kill him." Okay, this thing is called It's Trying to Get In. 2 days had passed since the Teleton disaster, and now there were only 11 survivors in that part of space now living on the planet Nada in 2 space stations. Actually, it's the moon, not planet Nada. In the space station that belonged to Major Matt Mason #1, who was now called Newton, Jeff Long was desperately trying to contact the Federation for food and supplies. Now that the main space station was gone, food, water, and other valuable things were going to have to be brought in by spaceship. Callisto #1 was now the new major and commander of the space station. Now that Newton was gone, he ordered the human crew about like a great commander. As the day went on, Doug Davis walked up to Callisto and said, "I feel bad about Matt. Matt, don't you? I feel bad about Matt. Don't you think we should say a few words for the dead?" Callisto stood up and said, "Matt, or Newton, as he was calling himself, is now dead. I don't think we will hear you. I don't think you'll hear you. When you are dead, you are gone. But if it will satisfy your human needs, then go ahead." Doug called the crew together to say some words for the dead Mason, who was now known as Newton. After the funeral, Callisto asked, "Satisfied?" Doug Davis had had enough of Callisto's logic and shouted angrily, "You cold-hearted, atheistic space freak." Davis took a swing at Callisto's big superior head, but Callisto blocked his punch and karate chopped him on the side of the neck, knocking Davis out. "Take him to the brig," ordered Callisto, and Doug Davis was taken to his quarters. An hour later, everyone had become bored and sat around hoping for a ship to come by to bring them supplies. Everyone tried to keep their minds off their fate that could be threatening them by playing chess and other games. Callisto sat down in Mason's seat and began playing chess with the computer, because he thought it was more challenging than the humans. Right when Callisto was about to check the computer's king, Sergeant Storm walked up to him and asked, "You were the cause of it." Callisto had a puzzled look on his face and asked, "The cause of what?" "You turned Mason into the strange mutant Newton." Showing no emotion as usual, Callisto said, "What makes you think that?" Storm pointed to the computer and said, "I found out on the computer. It played back the scene between you and Mason with the capsule you believed could make you like a god." Callisto suddenly had a nervous look and began shifting his eyes quickly back and forth, trying to think of something to say. Storm went on, saying, "How could you? In a sense, you are almost responsible for Mason's death and the destruction of the space station. You surprise me, Callisto. You claim to be so superior to us and all the other races in the galaxy, and yet you do something like this to your very own commander." Callisto stood up and turned off the computer to talk to Storm directly. The computer was going to beat him anyway. Callisto paused for a while, then said, "Storm, I have to tell you something. No matter how superior and evolved we Jupiterians are to Earthlings, we still make mistakes. It is just simple psychology. A poor man believes heaven is a place where riches are abundant. A starving man believes heaven is a place where food abounds. Where a rich man would think of heaven as a place where love and other great things are. You see, no matter how superior you are to people, you can always be even more so. My fabulous brain has power to do almost everything. I just couldn't turn down the opportunity of swallowing something that I believed could possibly be able to give me the power of telekinesis. You see, whatever you have, you will always want more. I hope you can see my reasoning." "I can," said Storm, "but that is why people break the law. And since you broke the law, I am going to have to report you." Storm started to walk off to tell the others about Callisto and what he did, but Callisto stopped him by saying, "If you tell the others about me, Storm, I'll get even. You know I can do it too. It will look like an accident." "Threatening me, are you?" Let's just say, let's just call it our little secret, replied Callisto. You know what a great, you know what a great chess player, you know what a great chess player I am. Yes, well then, may I say more? Storm was about to walk off and do something else when suddenly Jeff Long came in holding a small nuclear bomb. What is this for? Sergeant Storm asked Jeff Long. Callisto ordered this. Oh yeah, Callisto ordered this to be detonated underground, reported Jeff Long. It contains energy that transforms Mason into a mutant. Storm shouted to Callisto with fury, "Why in the hell did you have to put that unfamiliar energy into a bomb? Do you want us to all become mutants?" Callisto looked a little nervous at the situation facing them, and he said, trying to show no emotion, "At the time, I believed that if we put it into a bomb and detonated it underground, it would cut the time in half to put the energy underground, and then the explosives. I wanted to experiment on the effects it would have on the atomic structure of this planet." Sergeant Storm shouted, "Boy, this is the stupidest thing that I have ever heard in my life. You really surprise me, Callisto." Callisto stared at Storm evilly and said, "Of course you have to take into account that I was still under the effects of the Kusuma drug that I had swallowed a few weeks before. If you really want to know the truth, the drug didn't quite wear off until a few hours ago. I have been temporarily insane even ever since I took the drug. I haven't been thinking logically." "Boy, is that the truth," said Storm angrily. "Well, what are you going to do with it now that you are not insane?" asked Jeff Long. It contains part of the meteorite. Before Captain Laser had sealed it up in the cave, I decided to take a part of it for research. Then, when I lost my sense of reasoning from the drug, I mixed the piece of meteorite with the bomb device. I suggest that you either take it apart or bury it somewhere." Suddenly, when Jeff Long was about to talk about burying it, a blip showed up on the radar system of the space station. Everyone gathered around the viewing screen and hoped that the blip was a spaceship carrying supplies. "Jeff, call Captain Laser to go out and investigate the UFO," ordered Callisto. A few minutes later, Captain Laser, the 12-foot tall giant, went out to investigate the approaching object by riding on a battle tank-like weapon called a firebolt. Instead of using artillery, it fired energy balls. "What do you see?" asked Callisto on his communicator. "I can't see it. I can't see it yet," reported Laser. "It appears to duck in and out of the craters. Whatever it is, it moves fast. Well, anyway, this will be continued on another tape, and it'll be known as Part 3 of the Vessel Newton. And well, anyway, after this, you'll see what I'm talking about a few months ago when I thought that I'd be ending it on this tape. Apparently, that's not going to happen. Bye for now. Thanks for listening. Hello, my name is Bruce Ramsey. The date today is November 20th, 1983. Getting close to Thanksgiving. And how did you like the end of the Newton? Were you pleased with it? Did you find it entertaining or anything like that? Did it stir some feeling in you, like, wow, this is really neat or something? I wrote that whole thing up in 1 month, just typing away. let's see. I was thinking of putting Newton's Time Odyssey with it. The I guess you could call it the real 11th or 12th book of Newton. But I don't know. Because see, at the end of Newton, at the end of Engines, it goes to Kryptonite, and he lives out his life there. He marries the girl, and then 10 years later, he's bored again. He's done everything. I mean, his life is, he's done everything, but he's bored. So he takes another time odyssey into the future, and what happens is he even though he thinks life is meaning, he's traveling for meaning by going off into the future. He goes to Earth in a time car, a car which is in the shape of a time machine in the shape of a car. Goes way back in the past, and he meets these elves, and then he goes into the future. Everything is changing. It's not following a logical pattern. You know, he meets, and it's a really far out story. It's kind of like meeting the hobbits or something. Then he goes in the future. Not, but he lands in Rome in the olden times and goes and scares the Romans around with his technology and all that. Then he goes into the future, then goes to our time. He goes to Northern California, watches San Francisco get built up, and then when he reaches near the year 2000, there's a nuclear war between Russia and the United States. San Francisco is destroyed in an H-bomb, and everything's decimated, changing the way he remembered time, because the nuclear war didn't take place until about 40 years later, the way he remembered it. And so near the year it was the year 2001 and a half that the world was destroyed in Newton's Time Odyssey. Newton then goes to England, and the last story of the Newton series, believe it or not, is Revelation, where he's going through the tribulation, and it has biblical things, only it's more spacey, robots and things trying to chop off their heads and all that. And he's helping the Christians out, but he thinks life is meaningless because he doesn't think this is a tribulation, even though I say, well, God's coming back and all that. He thinks, well, I don't want to disappoint you, but I went into the future a long time ago, and 50 million years in the future, and they're still looking for God. And behold, he didn't come quickly. And so he depressed some of them committed suicide, and Newton was depressing them. But then finally, when Newton was going to destroy himself by causing an overload in his time car, in an alley, he put himself in another dimension so he wouldn't destroy that part of the world. He looked up in the sky through the alley, and saw the clouds part. And guess who came down? It ends with, and Newton was finally happy because God came and saved the world. And that's how the Newton series ends. But then I wrote at the end of that book, after the book was finished, I wrote on the book, if the year 2000 passes and this author is still here, the Newton will return again in the book Newton Meets God. And I'll tell you about that later on if I write another Newton book. I'm having some ideas about it. I don't know if I want to do it though, because I might get in trouble if I write something about God. If there is a God, that is. I don't know if I want... I've had some horrible feelings of making God, where Newton finds God out and he's Satan. So, I don't think I want to do that because, then Newton ends up, beating God up and saying, say you're sorry, say you're sorry. Then he says, I'm sorry. Gosh. I don't think I'll do it because it's, it could be blasphemous and I'd probably lose more hair than I am right now. I lost 350 hairs off my head today. I guess the next time you see me, I'll be an old, ugly, funny, bald-headed man with glasses. Anyway, I hope God comes back. I really hope God comes back. Oh, before this goes out, I'm going to do the monologue of Shakespeare. To be or not to be. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is noble in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep no more, and to sleep to say we end the heartache and the thousand natural shocks that flesh is heir to. 'Tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die, to sleep, perchance to dream, aye, there's the rub, from that sleep of death what dreams may come when we have shuffled off the smallful coil. Must give us pause. There's the respect that makes calamity of so long life. For who would bear the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the loss of delay, the insolence of office, and the spurns of patient merit, of the unworthy takes, when he himself might quite as make with a bare bought kin? Who would fardels bear, to grunt and sweat under a weary life, when he himself, the undiscovered country from whose spawn no traveller returns, puzzles the will, and makes us rather bear those ills we have, than fly to others that we know not of? Thus, conscience does make cowards of us all, and thus an interview of resolution with this regard. Their currents turn awry, and lose the name of action. Softly now, the fair Ophelia, nymph of thy orisons, be all my sins remembered. And this was a